This is Dr. Winters, and I want to answer the question, can children benefit from QNRT, Quantum Neuro Reset Therapy? And so one of the ways that children can benefit from it is better concentration and focus. Because if their fight, flight, limbic, protective part of the brain is firing a lot, then it's going to inhibit the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex helps with planning, execution of movements, planning events, planning actions. It's going to inhibit inappropriate social behavior, inhibit talking when you shouldn't be talking, inhibit jumping around in your seat when you shouldn't be jumping around in your seat. And so this prefrontal cortex is going to help those areas if it's not inhibited, and it will be inhibited if the child has experienced a lot of trauma or even smaller amounts of trauma that may not seem real significant to us but did to the child at the time. This trauma could be things like loss of a parent through divorce or through death, or a parent going to jail. It can be things like substance abuse in the family. It can be just an abnormal amount of yelling, screaming, fighting, fussing, inappropriate discipline, physical or mental, emotional. All of these things can lock into the child's limbic protective part of the brain. The part of the brain that, like when you touch a hot stove and jerks you back, that part of the brain that burns a little memory pattern in there. And then the child starts responding to voice tones and facial expressions and things that were going on at the time. And we don't even realize that the child's brain is still responding to that. And that's inhibiting this prefrontal cortex, and it's causing them to jump around more, to say inappropriate things, to not be able to plan and execute and pay attention. And so as we clear the child's brain of these traumas through QNRT, it can make a big difference for them. And what does it look like, QNRT in a child? And so it's very simple. It really looks just like it does in an adult. Essentially, the brain and body is telling a story through a brain exam where we see where we get change in the nervous system with different brain lobes, and through shining laser light on different tissues, we know the story that's being told by the mind and body. And so we relay that story to the child, and usually they know instantly what their stresses are if it's in the terms of time frames of conscious memory. If they don't know, if it's not in the time frame of conscious memory, perhaps the parent will know the story, and usually they will. For example, we've reset many children related to birth trauma, and the parent knew the story. The parent knew the story, like one of my grandchildren who had emergency C-section with cord around the neck, and then in the middle of the C-section went transverse and lodged in the uterus and was locked there. We know the story about that. The story is danger to the nervous system. We've also had children who had cerebral palsy, for example, due to bleeding on the brain during the birth process and after the birth process. And as we reset the midbrain where the bleeding was, and that's just what came up, it's not what I programmed to occur, as we reset the midbrain and the emotions like inability to go with the flow and feeling danger and unsafe and things like that, then and holding yourself back, we had one child who could not track anything with their eyes. On the 6th brain reset with QNRT, they could track perfectly. It was the first picture after that reset that the parents had ever got of the child looking at the camera. And it was a greatly improved ability to catch a ball and vastly improved confidence and a whole new relationship to the family from doing QNRT. And so QNRT for kids can be really, really powerful and really exciting to do. And we've had other kids who we've gotten comments from the teachers, wow, this kid is paying attention more. It's because we released emotional trauma in the brain that was running loops that was inhibiting the child's prefrontal cortex, so they couldn't think like they should be able to. They couldn't control their behavior and so forth. And there's obviously other things that can be involved with these attentional issues, but this is an area that gets often overlooked. And there's significant measurements in the literature that children who have childhood trauma, it often appears as ADHD where it may not be truly ADHD. And children who do have ADHD, whether it's true ADHD or being labeled that, have a lot higher percent of this emotional trauma that's causing them problems. So there's going to be likely a near effect, meaning soon that the child may be concentrating better, sitting better, not acting inappropriately as much. And there's going to be a long-term effect that we clear out the pathways that are going to cause a lot of stress response and cause a lot of health problems when that child moves into adulthood. And so there's some amazing books. One book is called Childhood Disrupted. I'd encourage everybody to read. That really gets over how our biography becomes our biology, how our story becomes reality in our body and in our mind. And so it's very powerful to get these stresses cleared in childhood through QNRT, and it's very safe. I do it with all my grandchildren that live locally, and we see great responses with that and practice members, and we're doing it with kids that just want to be as healthy as possible. The parents want them to be as healthy as possible. We're doing it with other kids that are autistic or on the autism spectrum. So any child in any situation can benefit from QNRT. It's very safe, and the parent will be there and help fill in any blanks. But it's just the body telling a story. We tell the story back to the child or to the parent. We figure out what the issue that the brain is dealing with, and then we do brain stimulation in terms of light, sound, touch, patient touching themselves, and lets the brain reboot so that the brain can function better and the child can have a better quality of life, and they're going to have a better future quality of life. And many studies show that childhood trauma causes many adult health problems. So the child's going to have a better future quality of life. So consider that if you're considering QNRT for your child.